Welcome to episode 1 of the video camera course from the Cine Skill School, and today is going to be all about selecting the right camera body, the different features and buttons that they come with, and what to look out for when it comes to some sleazy marketing tactics from the big companies that are trying to catch beginners with things like 4K and 8K being the priority and the focal point of the video quality that they market. Because I'll give you guys a little secret, it really has very little to do with the resolution. Now, don't get me wrong, resolution is nice, it's important, and you want to be recording in 4K. That should just be the standard by today's standards. But it is not nearly the most important thing when it comes to how beautiful your image is going to look. So you're going to learn a bit more about that in today's episode, as well as how to select the right camera body. But for now, I have 4 handpicked selections for you guys that are going to go perfectly with this course in terms of which cameras to buy. And if you already have one, don't worry. You can participate with any camera body that you own. These are just the 4 that I think are going to work the best, not only for beginners, but also in cohesion with the course. Now, again, you don't need to have any of these 4 cameras. It's just going to be best in my opinion. But everything in this course is going to be, for the most part, pretty universal, no matter what kind of video camera that you have. So long as it was made in the last 5, 6, 7 years, you're going to be good to go. So let's get into the top 4 Cine Skill School recommended cameras for the video camera course. And with number 1, we have the Canon R50. Now, this is the most beginner-friendly option. It's got great autofocus, it's got a great price, and it has creator focus features. And what this means is it's really meant for vlogging. It's meant for a content creator that's just getting started, wants to be uploading to Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. It has a lot of vertical recording features as well. And in terms of the way the buttons and menus are actually laid out, it's super easy to pick up and play for someone that's never really handled a professional camera before. With the lens included, I think you can grab this one for about $750, and that's a great price. But with that affordability comes some sacrifice and some professional features, like the lack of ability to shoot in a log profile. And you guys will understand a bit more about what a log profile is as we get further in the course. But essentially, it's what allows you to do color grading. If you're not shooting in log, you can forget about trying to do any color grading to your footage. It's just going to ruin it. So if color grading is something that you want to get into and you want to add your own stylistic look to your footage and not be stuck to what's directly coming right out the camera, then log profile is going to be something important for you. But if you just want the easiest thing possible to use, then this is my recommended option right here, the Canon R50. Moving on to the next camera, we have the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. And this is my number 1 recommendation if your priority is ease of use, autofocus, and value. And this one's a bit more of a step up compared to the R50 because you can shoot in a log profile. It's a bit of a price increase compared to the R50, but what I like about the Sonys is that you have a bit more options when it comes to third-party lenses. The RF mount for a Canon lens, which we'll get into the next episode, all about lenses and lens mounts and what to look out for with that. But for now, all I want you to know is the Canon RF mount of lenses, which is all their newer camera systems, is a bit more closed off. They're a bit more iffy about working with third-party companies and things like that. Sony's going to give you a lot more options in terms of third-party lenses. So if you don't want to be stuck to only the lenses that Canon is offering you, then I would recommend maybe paying a little bit of a premium for the ZV-E10 over the R50. Camera number 3 is another one from Sony, and this is going to be the A7S III. This is a super popular professional camera. A lot of photographers and videographers started their professional careers with this camera just a few years ago. It's not that old of a camera. In fact, most of the cameras on this list are relatively new within the last 5 years. And in terms of a camera body, that's really new. You can get used cameras from 5, 6, 7 years ago and still get great results. You don't have to always have the newest camera body. It's much more important to have great lenses and a great ability to compose shots and use lighting and things like that. So really, any camera on this list is going to do you great. But if you really want to be more of a professional and get those pro features, have great log video, get a weather sealed body, and a full frame sensor that's going to give you the most amount of detail, this camera is really good for photography as well. I would recommend going with the A7S III. It's going to be a really good and reliable camera for many years to come. And lastly, camera number 4, the camera I'm using to make this course and show you guys how to operate a video camera, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. This is my number 1 recommendation if your priority is manual control of your camera, dynamic range, and a cinematic feel. Dynamic range is super important. When it comes to camera bodies, they like to market 4K 30 FPS and, 60 frames per second video recording. And a lot of times you can find cameras like that on Amazon for less than $100, and they say 4K recording, 30 FPS. You might be wondering, why are they so cheap? Because they have absolutely no dynamic range. The size of the sensor is tiny, so you get no detail. And usually they're only recording in 8-bit, or sometimes with those really cheaper cameras, even less than that. And what that means is you're not getting a lot of information for the video file to process and work with, which means it's going to look noisy, it's going to look pretty bad. Whereas a Pocket 4K from Blackmagic is giving you 12 stops of dynamic range, which is insane. That means if you're in a situation where it's really bright and you have a lot of shadows in the same frame, you're going to get the detail of both the really bright portions and the really dark portions of the frame without really compromising either or. That combined with the ability to shoot in 12-bit video gives this thing an insane level of quality and compression when it comes to uploading to the internet and actually viewing the videos on a digital platform. So I know that sounds like a bunch of complicated tech nerd talk, and it kind of is, but all you need to remember is dynamic range, bitrate are basically the two most important factors when it comes to how beautiful is my video gonna look and feel when it's all done. This Pocket 4K gives you the most of those two things out of any camera on this list at the sacrifice of a lot of automatic features. So you're not going to have autofocus. You're not going to have the ability to super easily stabilize your footage right within the camera and stuff like that. A lot of those features are sacrificed to get the price down and really provide the most beautiful image possible for the money. Now, the good part about this camera is even though you're sacrificing a lot of automatic features, the menu and the software is so clean and so beautifully well designed that it makes it super beginner friendly for a cinema camera. And that's exactly what this thing is. It's a cinema camera. The other ones are more hybrid mirrorless cameras. This one is not focused on photography at all. You get all cinema focused features on this camera at the expense of autofocus and the other things that I just mentioned. So recap, what's the most important part of what we just learned in this segment? Dynamic range, bitrate, and sensor size are the three most important things when it comes to a beautiful image. That cinematic quality is going to come from those three things, not alone, but that sort of makes up like 80% of it. But something like the difference between 4K resolution and 1080p resolution, I would say comes fourth to those three things. And that's the big marketing point that they're going to try to get you with any type of video camera, even the really cheap ones on Amazon for like $50. You know, everything these days can record in at least 4K 30. And people think just because they're getting a 4K camera, it's gonna have this ultra sharp commercial look to it, and that's just not the case. If you have a smartphone size sensor, you're just not gonna get the image quality and the detail that you could get out of really any modern video camera. And they cannot compete in terms of dynamic range and bitrate and codec and stuff like that. Now, the iPhones are getting very good and they can shoot in a log profile now, but it goes back to sensor size. You're not gonna get the same amount of detail as even an MFT sensor like a Pocket 4K. And when you compare it to a full frame camera sensor, it's just night and day difference in terms of low light performance and in terms of detail on bigger TVs and screens. Also, phones tend to do this thing where they really like compress people's faces and they make it look way more digital. And once you get a more high-end camera, you're really going to see the difference in how natural people's skin and their faces look. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at my camera, the different buttons and features that it comes with. And even if you're using something different, you'll still learn a thing or two about how your camera works and all the different things that are universal between basically any video camera. Now, the biggest difference between what I have on this table here is that you probably have a hybrid mirrorless camera while this is a cinema camera. And the biggest difference there is that there's no dials or knobs on the top of the camera to switch between any of the different modes, because there's only one mode, it's just video. So needless to say, everything pertaining to this course is gonna be in the video mode of your camera. So turn your knob to video mode and you'll be able to obviously follow along with everything that I'm saying. So on the top of the camera here is where you have things like the function buttons, which may depend on the price point of your camera, whether you have these or not. If you have a more expensive camera or a cinema focused camera, you'll likely have dedicated programmable buttons. And you'll see in a future video in the course how we can go into our camera's menu and actually decide what we want those buttons to do. Then right here above that, we have the ISO, the shutter, and the white balance button, so you can obviously just press those really quick and have quick access to change your different settings. And then you pair that with the scroll wheel that's on the top of the handle of most cameras, or in some cases on the back side where your thumb would rest right here. And that's how you can quickly change between your different settings, turn them up and down without having to interact with your touchscreen. And then obviously we have the power switch right here and the record button. In your case, the shutter or photo button might be what's prioritized. In my case, it's the inverse, because once again, cinema camera versus hybrid camera. Then looking at the face of the camera, you might have some different buttons there as well. You might have what looks like a D-pad from like a Nintendo DS sitting right here. Some manufacturers like to use that, especially mirrorless cameras will have that in a lot of cases because the screen's a lot smaller. I have a much larger screen, so they didn't include that on this camera. But those directional buttons might also have a secondary function, like switching between auto and manual focus, selecting your ISO and different things like that as well. Now here on the bottom, I have a playback button. I have a menu button right above that. I have a magnify button, and then I have a high frame rate button, which is really cool because that's basically slow-mo at the switch of a button. Then on the top here, I have a button to actually control some type of servo autofocus, which is a bit more advanced. And then also a button to program LUTs directly into the camera, which is pretty cool. LUTs are basically filters that you use when you're color grading your footage. And some cameras might have the ability to basically record with those filters baked onto the footage, so you never have to actually go and do it in the editing process. The recording will already have that stylization applied to it as soon as you record it. I recommend staying away from things like that if you want to get into color grading and really become a pro editor, because you're gonna have a lot more control in the post-production process. But we'll get to all that later in the course. Then on the side of the camera, we have different doors here that access different ports. So we have the microphone, the headphone jack, we have a full-size HDMI port right here, and then on the bottom you have things for an XLR microphone, and of course your charging. And the bottom of the camera is for basically every camera is where you're gonna find two things: the tripod mount and the battery door. A lot of cameras will keep the SD card in the battery door as well. I don't like this because it always gets in the way when you mount your camera on a tripod and you have to take it off to be able to swap your battery. Super annoying. But luckily this camera, and hopefully yours too, has the SD card on the side like this. Then of course, you're gonna have the ability to detach the lens from your camera and actually select what look and what focal length you wanna put on there. So we're gonna get into lenses in the next episode. Episode 2 is gonna be all about lenses. But as it pertains to the body of your camera, you can detach the lens, and that's going to reveal the sensor. Now, this is what's called an MFT, or a micro four thirds sensor camera, and that's going to dictate what size lens mount or lenses that you can actually attach on this camera. There's tons of different mounts for lenses from different manufacturers, all with varying sizes and sort of ways that they attach onto the camera. So make sure you find out what kind of lenses that the camera that you want is going to accept, and of course get those lenses. Now, as we were talking about earlier, the sensor size is going to play into how good your image looks. Any video camera is going to be a way bigger sensor size than something like a smartphone. And that's why even though some phones can record all the way up to 8K, like some Samsung phones, it's not going to look nearly as good as a dedicated video hybrid mirrorless or cinema camera. Anything on this list, anything you got basically over $300 is going to do you way better than a smartphone would. And that's because of sensor size and dynamic range, like I keep stressing in this video. So again, that should really go to show you that resolution is not everything. It doesn't matter if the camera shoots in 12K. If it has no dynamic range, a low bit rate, and a tiny sensor, it's not gonna look that great. The bigger the sensor, the more detail you can cram into the image. So when you blow it up on a bigger screen, it's gonna hold on to its detail, and it's not gonna start to have all these digital artifacts and noise all over the screen. And the dynamic range is controlling your brights and your darks in the image and the ability to balance between the two. So I hope you learned a little bit about how video cameras work and which one is gonna work right for you. And I'll see you in episode 2, where we're gonna talk all about camera lenses and how to pick the right one.